The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast
blah, blah, blah. It's entertainment, people. Enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unboxing Photography with Jim and Ricky. I'm Ricky, and opposite of me is Jim. So, Jim, thanks for being here. I appreciate you always. Thank you to the fans, listeners, and supporters also who continue to listen to what we have to say about random topics. So, yeah, quickly fill us in. How you been? What's new with you? And then we'll get started.
Doing good. Been trying to get out and shoot a lot in the past couple of weeks because the weather has finally turned here in New York.
Yeah.
And been challenging myself because I got a 35 and a 90 for my M.
Yeah.
And so I've been going out with both of those and kind of switching back and forth between them. And because I never shoot 35, it's like my least favorite focal length. But I've been, challenging myself to use that. And then using the 90 on an M, which is definitely challenging because the box is so small on a .72 mag. Yeah. But that's what I'm doing. And I've been shooting some medium format too, but it's just good to have the weather be nice and get out and in the good weather and shoot. And yeah, I know you just came back from a big trip too, right?
Yes. So I spent approximately 10 days traveling from Osaka to Kyoto. And then I ended it in Tokyo, which was a little it's normal for me to go to Tokyo. I wanted to try to go to other locations this particular go around, and I was able to, it played out perfectly because I've always tried to go to Osaka and Kyoto to see the cherry blossoms. And the thing about those are the weather is always hit or miss. So I'm either always too early or I'm too late. But this time I made it right on the exact moment where it was full bloom. So I got lots of pictures of cherry blossoms, which I wanted. And I got to do everything that I initially planned to. So additionally to picking up some gear, it was weird. I've never seen it. I heard stories of it. But I found a 200 millimeter f4 M mount lens. It's super old, and you need this weird attachment. It's like a microscope. It's the only way to actually focus because of the barrel. The lens itself, you need this attachment or it won't work. The lens itself is a screw mount, LTM. So initially, I thought I could just attach that to an M mount adapter and just focus through live view. It doesn't work. So you need the actual second, the back part. So I used it once on film, and it actually is really good. So I'm curious to see, just to go out and use a 200 millimeter lens. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Cool. Very cool. And you're using the Nocti also a lot, I saw in your pictures, right?
Yes. So I've been wanting to focus a lot with the Nocti because since I spent so much money on it, and like everything just needs to be in 0.95 because why not? And I shot it on both digital and film, and I did really well with the critical focus on film. With film, you don't have to be super 100% just because the grain kind of makes up for it. But I would say probably in like the 98 to 100% critical focus range. So I'm getting used to it.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. Any projects you've been working on?
Not really specifically. I think just as an ongoing project, I think just being around New York and photographing in New York, I used to think that everything that I did was separate.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads into kind of what we were talking about today. But I think, you know, I take pictures of people, and I take pictures of, you know, kind of almost like buildings and street scenes and graffiti. And then I take abstract things or just little bits and pieces of things, and I'm shooting in graveyards and all this stuff. And I kind of looked at that as all separate stuff. But one of the things that doing a book does to help you, like when you start putting a book together and getting your images together, you start seeing common threads in your work. And even though I think that, like, okay, if I take pictures of out of Coney Island of the sideshow or of clowns, and then I'm taking pictures of people who look cool in the city or graffiti on a wall somewhere, that those are all different things. You can kind of draw a line through all that and just say, like, okay, well, this is what living in New York is, and this is my perspective on New York. And, you know, there might be ridiculous and extreme things that are just happening on the street, and those things might work perfectly well next to pictures that I took at the Coney Island Clown School, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you can kind of make something look, you put a clown next to anything, and you're either going to make that thing look more ridiculous or extreme, or maybe you're going to make it look less ridiculous or extreme. So I think I'm kind of post-project.
Okay.
And I'm just, everything that I'm doing kind of, to me, ends up working together, just because if I dig it, what the end result is, that's the project. Yeah. Like whatever I point my camera at is part of like the big project, which is just how I see shit. You know?
Yeah.
I think that if you shoot long enough, you know, I know that there's a lot of stuff like on YouTube and a lot of discussion about, like, I think people need to, you know, having a project can kind of be almost like a validator for what you're doing. Like you go like, oh, I'm just doing like random stuff. And like, I've talked to so many photographers, like on Substack, on YouTube, you know, just out on the street. And I think everybody feels like, because there's no, you know, everybody's looking for a point. They're looking for like, kind of like, what's the point of all this? And a project can be a way to kind of say like, well, I'm not just going out and doing random shit. I'm working on a project about X, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes you feel a little bit more like what you're doing has substance. And I've definitely done that at different times and tried to package things that I was looking at in that way. But I think what happens is after a while, you just get to a point where you've been shooting so much that I don't necessarily need to have a project to make me, to validate like what I'm doing or make it feel like there's a point. The point is just the thing itself.
I think we are coming to a turning point in photography where, like, it is like a lot of people are still doing like long-term projects. Nothing wrong with that, right? But I think because, and you probably see this a lot with the music industry, you got to keep putting it out, right? You got to put it out constantly. There's just the market, the field is flooded, and sometimes we may feel like if we don't put out a high output, then we're falling behind. In terms of, I don't want to say being relevant, because who determines that? No one really. But like you fall behind in the race, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying it's a competition to be racing against others, but to get your work out there and seen, if you know, it's really easy to get hidden. Micro projects, right? So zines kind of fill that space, right? You're starting to see a lot more publications, just like independent people starting their own magazines. I got interested in trying to kind of start a self-publishing thing. I got a lot of projects out, and not photo projects, just like projects in general and stuff I want to do for a business and stuff like that. But I think we're getting into a time where just small little, maybe a 4-piece, a 12-piece, it's going to be the standard. I don't know. Like, And I say that because I've talked to quite a few people who published books, right? You have a book published. And I had recently come across a article saying like there's really no point of trying to publish a book with like a big publisher, a name. You got to spend like up to $50,000 of your own cash, and you have to do like all the marketing. You pay for everything, and then like there's little bit of return on investment. So I think kind of like how people started to self-publish their music on the internet, we are going to probably be entering a age of just that kind of photographic media.
Well, there's a lot to unpack about all the stuff that you just said. So I'll start from what you just said and work back to the last thing. I think that's been going on for a while, right? Like people have been trying to make things of their own for a while. Like I know a lot of people who've done scenes and things like that. And the only reason to do a book is if, with a big publisher, there has to be demand for it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have an audience, that's the first thing. Like any product that you're going to put out into the marketplace, like, you have to do a little bit of market research and understand like, okay, well, what is the demand for this? Is there somebody who actually wants this, right? Like you can do the thing like if you anybody who's been in a band knows that like, you tell everybody at work, hey, my band is playing this Friday. We're going to be at this club. And so everybody from the office goes because they're like, hey, Joey's got a band. He's got a show. He's in this band. All right, let's go check it out because there's a curiosity. Mm-hmm. And those people all go to the show and they have a good time and they're amazed because they see you playing drums or singing or whatever. And then the next, like a couple of weeks later, hey, we're playing again. And maybe another couple, maybe they come again, but it's like maybe a quarter of the people who came the first time. Mm-hmm. And then, if, by the time you're going up to them for the third or fourth gig, people are like actively avoiding you in the hallways because like, oh, this guy's going to hit me up about going to his fucking show again, like, because there's not real demand. They're just your friends. They're backing you up. They're supporting you. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, who the fuck wants this? Right. And in a situation of a photo book that is done with a publisher, that's a completely different economy. Like Phil's most recent book, right? Mm-hmm. I saw on Amazon, like, because I look at photography stuff, so it prompted me on the book. And I think the list price of that book is like $90, something like that. And the book's price had been cut to like $50 or something. And he had a huge discount off the cover price. Mm-hmm. And it's not been out that long, But this is how the book selling economy goes. They buy books and they sell a bunch of books at one price, and then it's out for a little while. And then the book sellers say, I bought all this inventory and I'm still sitting on it. It hasn't sold, so I want to return it. And then the booksellers go, I'll give you, a discount, whatever. And then, so they slash the price to half of what it was. Mm-hmm. Now you as an artist, you're getting a royalty based on whatever it was sold for. And that probably agreement is like variable where like, hey, if we have to cut the price of what we made on the book in order for the booksellers to keep it on their shelves, you're going to get a royalty that's based on whatever that wholesale price was that got lowered from whatever it was previously, right? Yeah. So most people you talk to, they do books not because a book ever makes any of the money. Mm. Put aside the like self-financing thing, which tons of people have said, like, they have to come up with the cash. I know Phil was a different situation, but because they asked him to do the book. But a book doesn't necessarily or most of the time doesn't put money in your pocket. But what it does is it gives you like the largesse of, hey, I put out a book. I can be on this panel because I have a book. I'm going to be at Perry Photo because I put out a book. I have validity because I could put out a book, so I can do mentorships and classes, and I can speak as though I have some level of expertise because I have a book out. Mm-hmm. It's a validator. And whether or not that in and of itself is something you extract cash from, there's very few people who can generate money just from doing a book and have it be successful. Like the Humans of New York guy, different story, but that guy's got his own thing going on. I guarantee you he's not going into his pocket and paying a publisher to do it. You know, like they're printing mega books and he's getting in advance and he's making money off that. That's a different kind of a thing. But I think the reason why people are interested in photo books generally and prints and things like that is I think that we haven't necessarily entered an era specific to photo books. I think we've entered an era of a desire from people to have things be tangible in a way that the digital economy and the digital lifestyle has reduced or diminished since it came onto the horizon. Like people who, and we've talked about this before, but people who are digital natives who listen to everything on Spotify or iTunes or whatever, like they're buying albums and they might buy albums and never even listen to them. Like half the people who buy records don't listen to them. Cassettes have come back, mini discs have come back, you know, because people have a desire to have something tangible, you know, and as much as, you know, I see when I walk around New York, anytime there's like any AI ad up in a subway or on the wall, it's immediately just pasted with graffiti. Fuck AI sucks, get a real friend, blah, blah, you know, whatever. There's a big backlash to the whole kind of AI thing.
Yeah.
And the feeling that like there's all these like billionaire tech overlords who don't give a shit about us, just keep raising prices on everything or turning the world into this fucking like hellscape where we're not individuals. Everything's getting diminished. Everything costs more money while everybody else gets more rich. And it's like, you know, what am I going to do? Okay, I can support my community. How do I do that? Well, if an artist puts out a book, cool. If an artist does a gallery show, I'll show up. If an artist self-releases an LP or puts out a t-shirt, I'll buy that. There's, in the helplessness of the moment of all of this technical overload and these people who are extracting everything from us without our consent or with our consent because we're just too fucking lazy to do anything about it. Like if you're too lazy to do anything about it, then buy a book.
Yeah.
That might buy, you know, or subscribe to somebody on Patreon or on Substack or send them a coffee on YouTube or subscribe, you know, whatever. That like kind of support of artists and support of community through that, I think is part of what goes into what you're talking about. And then to rewind to the very beginning, what you said about the demand to keep producing, that's an artificial thing that's been created by these same fucking guys because Daniel Ack and the guy who runs Instagram and the YouTube people and everything, they want us to be like hamsters on a little wheel, constantly putting out content because the more new content there is, the more ads they can serve, the more billions they can funnel and put in their pockets and then tell us why our content is worth nothing or why they're only going to give us pennies for playing it while they buy a bigger fucking yacht, right? So the thing is, you have to say, if you're going to be somebody who's on that hamster wheel, and I know plenty of people who have very active YouTube channels and they're like, oh God, it's like serving a beast. And I have a YouTube channel now and like, I'll put out a video when the fuck I want to put out a video, when I have something to say, you know, and I know other people that are like, you know, I need to put out X amount of videos, X amount of shorts. I need to really make sure do A/B testing on my thumbnails, blah, blah, blah. I need to put out everything on this schedule. I've got a spreadsheet. It tells me what I have to do. And they're doing that for a living. And, you know, if you want to do that effectively, I guess you have to buy into that. But if you're an artist and you're making something because you have something to say, that is a very different thing than saying, I'm going to participate in the digital economy because I'm trying to extract something from how that works, right? That's a very different thing. The lucky people who can kind of have something to say and can marry that to the digital economy and extract something from it, more power to them. And that's a lot of work to have an artist and really have something to say and also be on that fucking grind and participate in it in a successful way. There's very few people that do that effectively, and they get mad props from me for being able to do it. I am interested, and I hope I would imagine anybody who listens to this, because of the type of shit that we talk about, because we're not a gear show. I would imagine anybody who's listening to this is more interested in self-fulfillment than in playing the fucking like and subscribe game that economy tells us we have to participate in.
I kind of caught on. So I am in complete agreement with you on basically all of that. The self-fulfillment is really, that's where I'm at. Like I'm doing things my way because it makes me feel happy and it's what I want to do. And I can honestly say I kind of grew out of chasing that, putting out, like, because Yeah, I did it. I was notorious for buying new cameras, and as soon as I took a picture, it was already on Instagram. That was me. And then I started to realize it wasn't for me. I wasn't serving a purpose. I didn't have, like you said, I wrote it down because I really liked it. The audience, I didn't have anyone that really cared, or like I didn't have that big crowd. So I just realized that, hey, I'm doing this for myself. I enjoy doing it, and I'm going to continue doing that. And I don't need to post every picture I take. And then fast forward to kind of recently, where I realized even on my Instagram feed, I don't need hundreds of photos on my. So I only keep 9. And the reason why I went with 9 is if someone scrolls down, 9 photos will fit on your screen all at once. Now I'll change them, I'll update them, and I'm very, and this kind of goes into the storytelling, which is kind of what our topic's supposed to be about today. The story changes. Where am I at in my life right now? What did I experience? Where did I travel to? And I'm very careful with that selection. And so I have 9 posts at all times. And that's just because that's what I want to do. That's the crowd I want to serve. You'll see new work or you won't. It's just however I'm feeling that day. Now, when I select the photos, that's different. Now I'm entering the storytelling mode. And my posts are pretty cryptic. A lot of people probably don't realize, or they don't pay attention to how my photos are curated. And they're curated. I'll share this with you. They're curated from front to back, moving in. So each image on opposite ends, they actually are parallel to each other. So they're connected in some way. And people probably don't realize that because they're split apart so fast or so far. And you actually have to scroll, but that's intentional. So you won't, if you don't really like study how I lay it out, you'll never get it.
Well, and it's cool that you have intent like that, and that I'm sure that helped. When you're going through the editing process, like you that's something that you have in mind. You're like, okay, what am I going to upload and how am I going to upload it? And does that affect at all? Do you only do that in the editing process, or do you think about it that way when you're out shooting?
I don't. For some reason, when I shoot, I'm focused on just the moment. I don't think about editing. I don't think about what I want to post. That doesn't come into mind until actually I'm starting going through the photos. And even then, what my process is, I'll select like 30 images. And then I'll have my favorites, right? Your babies. And you're like, oh, I really want to show this one. But when I'm starting to go through my layout, I'm like, this doesn't fit in any way, shape, or form with the story I want to tell. So I am my own worst critic, and I cut it. But I'm able to do that. I am self-aware, where I realize, like, no matter, this is my number one favorite photo I took from my trip, it doesn't fit in my story. I don't need to share it. No one will see it. So no one will know it's my favorite photo. And I cut it.
Well, you could use it. You could put it in another one.
Yeah.
Right. Another time. It might work for another. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the kind of cool things about Lightroom is, like, sometimes I'll have one image and I'll go, that I really like, that I just got off a roll, and maybe it'll be kind of different than everything else that I shot. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, well, let me go back through my Lightroom catalog and see if I could find images that I can put with this that make sense, so that I can do a post. So I'll have mixed stuff that I shot today or yesterday or whatever, and then I'll have stuff that was 2 years old on there. The way I kind of think about my posts a lot of times on IG will either be, if I go out and I go and do something specific, I might have a whole bunch of stuff just from one day or from one dump, because that's what it is. But then other times I'll do that and more kind of mix things up. The more I think about it, there's like artists who musical artists who do like beat tapes. It's just like basically like do like a mix that's just like different beats, and like it'll have like spoken word coming in and out, and different musical styles, and the tempos will get slowed down and speeded up, and it's just like basically just like this like almost kind of like urban soundtrack kind of beats. It's like very it's hip hop influenced, but an artist that's a good example of this is there's an artist named Kutma, Kutmah, for anybody who's interested. But it's, he'll have like an hour long like beat tape that'll just be a mix of all the shit, and it's constantly changing. It's not like song oriented. And I kind of feel like in a way, like sometimes that my photography and my whole feed is like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I might, I don't want to be all the same thing. Like you're not all going to see like high contrast, black and white, angular shit, or fashion shots, or,
portrait tones,
stereotypical film type shit. Yeah. I just like to mix it up. And the way that I never really thought of it this way, but like just almost like somebody who's like creating beats and just taking all these disparate elements and like turning into something that's like 30 minutes or an hour of music that's like kind of all over the fucking place.
Mm-hmm.
I love that kind of music because I just put it on my headphones when I'm riding the subway, and it's just like, it's constantly changing up, but it's all from the same artist, and it's all kind of coming from the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But there's unexpected shit going on. And that's more interesting to me than, I don't want somebody to ever log onto my, see something in feed from me and go like, and know exactly what they're going to see before they see it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here's another typical blah, 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 like, so I'll do double exposures, but if I was only doing multiple exposures after a while, people are like, oh, he's the multiple exposure guy. And I actually saw somebody out on the street who was like talking to me about my multiple exposure stuff. And they kept like referring to it. And I'm like, yeah, it's totally cool. And I was giving them some techniques and stuff. And they were like, asking me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had to say like, I'll have days when I feel like doing that. And then I'll have other days when I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't even think about it, so anyhow, I think it's like, again, it's like a personal fulfillment type thing. And the rhyme and reason of how you curate your content is going to change over the course of, the more stuff that you make, because you might have a different perspective. Like if you've been shooting for a really long time, you might look back on the past 5 years of work and go like, okay, all of this stuff works,
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't think it was going to work.
So I know our topic is storytelling, and I kind of want to know, like, what is your thought process on the story itself of the photo? And I say that because there's times where I go out shooting and I don't have a story. I don't have nothing to share. I'm just doing it because of personal fulfillment. I enjoy pushing the shutter. That's what I like to do. And in those moments, I just call it mindless photography, where I'm just walking and snapping. I see something that may be interesting, maybe not. It's just instinctual, and I push it. Mindless photography. And then there's other times where I'm very focused, like for this trip in Osaka. I wanted to focus on cherry blossoms, the trees. I wanted to focus on the people who just enjoy it, right? I wanted to focus on the moment itself. So I really hyper-focused on searching for that criteria. And I was mindful about that. And then there was some times where I was like, okay, I did a lot of what I wanted to do this block of time. Now I'm just going to walk and I'm just going to shoot. So what's kind of your thought process on the act of storytelling?
Well, two things about what you just said. Like, I think you're talking about instinct versus intent, right? Because, and Ralph Gibson refers to like the intent part as, which is a Dorothea Lange thing, point of departure, right? Like, you know exactly what you're looking for, right? And if you know what you're looking for, then you're going to have a much better chance of getting it because you know exactly what you're looking for. And that's a great way to go out and photograph. And like, if I go to the St. Patrick's Day parade to shoot it, like that's intentful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this kind of instinctive shooting when you go out and you're just like, I'm just going to like look for stuff and just kind of photograph what speaks to me. I still think that there's intent even when you feel like you're only shooting with instinct, and the intent comes from like what interests you, right? And what drives you. So you might not go out and say, I'm going to take a picture of flowers today, but what you're drawn to, even though you might not be specific about what you're looking for, is based on, what your interests are. So there's still, and even when you're just shooting instinctively, like with no necessary point or goal or subject matter, I think that you still have like some level of intent there just based on who you are. So they're never completely divorced from each other. But, the thing about storytelling is so funny. Like I kind of have a problem with the phrase, because it's one of those, just like authenticity, it's one of those like bullshit 50 Cent, MBA PowerPoint fucking phrases that is being used to kind of tell people what they should be thinking about or what's important or how to package their shit or whatever, and it's not a new fucking thing. When Matthew Brady was taking pictures of this in the Civil War, it was storytelling. Like if I take a picture of a rotten toenail I have, that could be storytelling. Like, right. Or a picture of a drip coming out of no, seriously. Or if I take a picture of a drip coming out of a faucet, like it doesn't need to be this big grandiose fucking thing, right? But again, it's this validator, and we're all looking for validation, for validity, right? And so it kind of is adjacent to that authenticity. Are your photos authentic? Are you storytelling? It's like, what? Every single photograph, there's no blueprint for storytelling. Every single photograph, no matter what it is of, can be storytelling. Yeah. And it can be storytelling in a single image, or it can be storytelling a bunch of other images. If I take a fucking pencil that my kid has, like this cute little pencil, and I put it on a table, right? Let's say I put together, like, I had a bunch of child's drawings, right? And your first 3 frames for child's drawings, and then there's a picture of a child, right? And then there's a picture of the child playing outside, and it's in the Middle East somewhere. And then there's a picture of war, and then there's a picture of rubble, and then there's a picture of a mother crying, and then there's a picture of a pencil and an empty pad of paper on the table, and the pencil is on top of it, and the page is blank. What did that story just tell you? It was a pretty clear narrative, right, of what happened, right? Now, I could take any single one of those frames and separate them and then create a different story by putting those images with something else, right? So I can either start and say, I'm going to tell a story and go somewhere and, like a documentary photographer, and create a story based on, a situation and my creative vision, and end up with a story. I can go back into my archives and create a story across 10 years of photographs just by pulling out different images and telling a story I want to tell. I could tell a story with this one pencil and a couple of things if I wanted to, and tell a story in that. So when people beat themselves up and go, I got to do more storytelling in my photos, or how do I do storytelling in my photos? I think the first thing they need to ask themselves is, like, what do you look at the history of photography, look at documentary photography, look at abstract photography, look at portraiture, look at all these different things, because portraiture can be a story also, right? Just a single portrait of a person. So the thing is, I think that the reason why I'm kind of like down on it as a descriptor is it's doing that thing that the internet does of turning something into a trend and trying to boil something down, which is fundamental, into kind of some kind of marketing hype that now we're obligated to do. Like, oh, I have to be authentic. You know what? When were you not fucking authentic? Yeah. Have you spent your whole life being somebody else? Are the pictures that you've taken not your own? Where's the fucking authenticity button on the camera? Where's the storytelling button on the camera? All of this comes from who we are as people and what we have to say. Yeah. And you get better at it by doing it over a certain amount of time and by fucking educating yourself. Like, go look at the history of photography, go look at painting, read books, read stories about artists, read history. Like, that's how you extract storytelling, you know? And I think that it's really important for people to understand when they see these trends and these words, and this comes from being old. Like, I'm a fucking old guy, right? I understand that. And when I was young, I would pick up these words or these trends and I'd be like, yeah, I get like all fucking angry and hardcore about like, I must do this in my creative work, or I must do this. Like when I was in a thrash band when I was younger, like they were like, you know, fuck hair bands, you know, like I hate all these posers, you know, and then like 20 years later, I'm like, you know what? A lot of those poser bands, like it was just funny. It was fun. Mm-hmm. Why did I hate that stuff so much? You know, you know, my music is important. Yeah, but Whitesnake is bullshit. You know what? Whitesnake's a goof. Like there's Tony Katane, like on the hood of a fucking car in a nightgown, and David Coverdale, like it's hilarious. You know, like it's funny. You know, but I had to be like so blah, 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 blah. Because there were like, you know, almost like these political like principles. Like I was like had to like carry the fucking cross for all those kind of things. And I really do think that there are like these kind of like when you watch videos on YouTube, like search up storytelling and photography, and there's like an endless amount of videos and all these people going on and acting like it's this new fucking thing or like some amazingly special important thing, or you got to go in a workshop to learn how to storytell. Pick up a fucking photo book by anybody. Spend 2 minutes looking at anything in the history of photography and you'll see what the storytelling is. It's not a new thing.
It's definitely not.
Anyway.
It's been in existence since the start of photography, since the first person took a photo. Now, funny thing is,
it's been in existence since fucking cave paintings, bro. Exactly. It's been in existence since fucking cave painting. You go look at the caves of Altamira, and like there's a guy with a spear killing a buffalo, you know, and that was how many fucking tens of thousands of years ago. Storytelling has been around since we figured out how to like talk to each other.
How many megapixels was that rock and paint? Rhetorical question. Anyway, so it's very funny and coincidental. I was getting ready for work this morning, and this is even before we had before I messaged you before this podcast, like, hey, let's start podcasting tonight. I was preparing for work, you know, getting ready, putting my uniform on, and I had this thought, like, how can people say and I'm not saying this is for everyone. Maybe there's the people out there that don't fit into this category, but you know, they're like, oh, my photographs are so poetic, right? But how can someone say their photographs are poetic, but they don't read poetry? They don't write poetry. They couldn't even name a poet, right? Goes back to what you said, keyword, trend. And I think it's the machine trying to just push out key buzzwords. This is the flavor of the week. Poetry, storytelling. You need this, you need that. So I think they hyper focus on, it's probably intentional.
I think it's also, you know, listen, when you're younger and you're starting to do things and you're learning, you know, and you pick up all these things and you want to be liked and you want to be accepted and you want to be part of what's going on. So you see these things and you say that this is important. This is what everybody's saying is important. And a lot of this is fueled by social media, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the values of going to like get an education, and I'm not saying somebody should go spend $40,000 to learn how to take pictures at ICP or, you know, or anywhere, you know. But one of the great things about getting an education is that all of those kind of things are stripped away. And there's just, here's what the history is, here's what the technique is, here's what's important, here's how to do all these things. And all of those kind of pressures that are mostly driven by marketing and trying to get you to spend money or manipulate your feelings or manipulate you into producing content so that these platforms can perpetuate. You know, when you go to school, like it's different. You know, if they'll talk about storytelling, then they'll really kind of take that apart. Or if they talk about poetry and images, they'll say like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? You know, I was watching a video of a pretty popular YouTuber, and he was talking about different focal lengths, and he was talking about how the 35 millimeter was the most painterly of all focal lengths.
What does that even mean?
Like most artistic or something like that.
Painterly.
Well, and it was just, and I looked at all the comments, and all these people were just like agreeing, and I'm just like, I don't know how you make an assertion like that. Like,
yeah,
any lens and any camera and any film stock, then digital or digital camera can be used to do something that's painterly. Painterly does not apply to a specific focal length or view of angle to a subject or anything like that. It's, you look at an image and say that kind of, what does it mean to say painterly?
Yeah.
To me, painterly means that what a painter does first and foremost is they work within a frame, and the frame is blank when they start, and they decide what goes in the frame, and everything in that frame is in balance in relation to everything else that's in that frame. Whether you're talking about abstract art or whether you're talking about the Mona Lisa or what, you never see, unlike photography, which you see in almost everything that's on Instagram, you see for amateur photographers, and I would include us in that, relative to people like Joseph Cadelga or somebody like that, or Albert Watson or whoever. Like what you'll see from most people when they post is you'll see a subject in the frame, and then you'll see all the stuff that's unrelated to the subject, that doesn't support the subject, that is distracting, that undermines what the picture is about. That's the failing of 98% of the photographs on Instagram. Is the frame does not, the entirety of the frame does not support what the picture is about. And the masters of photography, when they take a picture, everything that's in the frame supports what the picture is about. And in a painting, every single painting that's good follows that principle. There's nothing in the frame that shouldn't be there or that's out of balance, because then it wouldn't be a good painting. Yeah. And the painter decides what's in the frame. So if someone says a lens is painterly, that is a ludicrous assertion. What makes an image painterly is everything in the frame in balance to everything else that's in the frame compositionally, whether it's a shape, whether it's light versus dark, whether it's in focus versus out of focus, whether it's color and different colors in the frame. That's what makes an image painterly, not the fucking focal length.
Yeah.
But the video gets 20 or 30,000 views, and everybody just parrots what the person says and says, "Oh yeah, 35 millimeters is the most painterly focal length."
And understand.
Yeah. But now if the person said, "For me, it's the most painterly because it enables me to have a tight composition and fit things in the way that I want to," and whatever. And there might have been some of that in the video. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm totally pissing on what this person said, but really how it should have been presented is this is how this lens helps me think more like a painter. And painters think this way. And in these photographs, here's examples of how I'm doing things in a painterly way. And the 35 millimeter is a focal length that helps me achieve that. That would probably be a better way to kind of make that argument. But anyway, it's just, I think that if you transcend beyond what social chatter says, because there's all these validators, like we put stuff on the internet and we put stuff on social media, and if it gets like a tremendous amount of likes, it's good because a bunch of people said it's good. And if you put stuff up and you get 10 likes, you're like, I guess that must be shit. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, there are certain things that resonate in that particular platform and in society that, if you put them up on a wall in a class at ICP or in front of a photo mentor, they'll look at something that got 20,000 likes and say, this is shit. And they'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. Or you might put something up that got no likes. And they'll go, this is great. Perfect. Yeah. So understanding that you can't listen to the social economy and the digital economy and all these platforms as either valid indications of the validity or non-validity of your photographs is an important fundamental to proceed on in considering anything you're doing.
I'm well convinced now. I'll probably be blackballed and I'll probably be covered up and just hidden. Industry plans. It's all marketing ploy. It's all industry plans. Going back to the rhetorical question that I asked about poetic photography, going back to that guy who says a 35 millimeter lens is the most painterly. Maybe for him it's painterly, but what if he doesn't even look at art? What if he doesn't know what the Starry Night is? What if he doesn't know what sunflowers is, right? What if he never goes to museums? Can he say painterly? Maybe it's just a trendy word that he heard from another YouTube video. Maybe he doesn't know what painterly really is. It's a good question to ask ourselves.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, like, if you try to define, well, what does that term actually mean? Mm-hmm. And you look at a painting like the Starry Night and start asking about perspective, about, you know, what he did with the brush, about the movement, about the energy, all these other kind of things. Like, you could take a college course for an entire semester just on that one painting.
Yes, you can.
And
favorite painting.
And really examine what it was about. So, you know, again, but it's okay, because when you're young and you haven't seen a lot of shit and you're just going online and you're looking at things, you're going to see all this. But what happens is, and I say this to anybody who's young, and anybody who's older will know what I'm talking about. You know, when you're young, you're influenced. All this stuff is being thrown at you, and you don't know. It's like we've talked about this before. Like, when you taste a quarter pounder with cheese for the first time, you're like, "This is the best hamburger I've ever had." And then 10 years later, you're like, "How did I eat that shit?" You know, like, because you've had what a good hamburger is. You know, like, in the beginning of your photographic journey, there's a lot of things that you like hear, and you're just like, "Oh, okay." And then after a while, you go like, "Oh, all right. Well, is that actually true? Does that actually hold water?" And you start to become more experienced. Some people will say cynical, and I know certainly in these talks I will come across as cynical at certain times. But it's just like, I'm being real, because I have seen things that I perceive to be bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I understand that when I was a younger person, I would have thought these things to be like religion. And I would have quoted them and said, like, "I will never change my mind about this. This is the absolute truth." And then 20 years later, I'm like, I was an idiot for thinking that. Yeah. You know, that's part of what we all have to go through. I wanted to kind of mention something about storytelling. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to really quick, just because I love Starry Night. Starry Night's my favorite photo since as long as I can remember. And I was actually lucky enough to see it. And I remember exactly when I seen it. So I left for basic training in November 2009. And I actually seen it October 2009. I was just walking. I was in Chicago. I was enjoying the city, you know, my last couple of weeks as a civilian, and I'm walking past the Chicago Art Institute, and they actually had a Van Gogh exhibit, and they free entry for military members. I was like, "Oh, I'm in the military." I showed them my paperwork and my ID, and they let me in for free. And I have to say, Van Gogh's painting is so underappreciated, even probably when he first created it. You actually have to, and this is why Jim always states you should go to a museum to see the painting, because you could see it on your phone, your tablet, your smart device, whatever it is you're viewing these things, but you don't really see the details. And you can't see the physical details of the painting itself until your like face is this close to it, where the paint is actually raised and each of the brush strokes has its own texture. Like, the guy was an artistic genius. And for no one to appreciate that level of artistic ability, right? I can't say that he's the world's greatest painter. I don't believe anybody's the world's greatest anything. People are really good at what they do. But that changed. It was a gift that I was able to see it in person, up close and personal, like just right there. And then I actually went to Amsterdam, and they had another exhibit of his, and I saw some other paintings I didn't see in the Chicago one. Amazing painter.
That's where the Van Gogh Museum is. Mm-hmm. And I went there first in 95, I think. Yeah. And the museum's gotten a lot better. But they have, an incredible selection of his work there. And there's a lot of impressive work at the I'm forgetting the name of the Modern Art Museum in Paris.
The Louvre.
That's another thing. That's what happened. No, not the Louvre. It's the other one. It's on the left bank. Musée d'Orsay. That's mostly impressionist work, and his work is in there as well. And it's unbelievable stuff. And the crazy thing is, during his life, I don't think he sold a single painting.
He did not.
And
he sold like 2.
He when he died, his brother Theo, who had supported him and like kind of was his agent and everything, died. I think maybe 6 months or a year after he did, and he had left all his paintings they became his brother's possessions. And then when the wife of his brother, somebody offered like a pittance for the painting or something like that. They were like worth nothing, and she had all these works, like 180 works or something like that, in her house, and wouldn't part with them. And then eventually, she put together shows of his work and everything. And by the end of her life, the work was starting to be appreciated. But,
he is what he is now.
To think that to think that his work is some of the most appreciated and valuable artwork in the history of the world. And during his lifetime, the guy couldn't get arrested. No one gave the tiniest shit about it. Just, it says a lot about when people go, oh, nobody's liking my photographs on Instagram. Okay, bro, calm down.
Yeah. Van Gogh syndrome.
Settle the fuck down. Cut a fear, shoot yourself in a field. Maybe somebody 20 years, 100 years from now like your shit.
Go take a picture.
Anyway,
of some
I have a really, really good example of storytelling and about how things take time to percolate, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe about 5 years ago, I met this photographer in New York City. His name was Budi. Budi.
I remember.
Egyptian young guy. And I had friends who were friends with him, and we ended up crossing paths and starting to talk, and he was an incredibly passionate guy. He was shooting an SL2S, which gave him a lot of problems over time. And we kind of bonded because I was using and I was using the SL, and that's one of the ways that we met. And anyway, he was somebody who was photographing protests, but then would go to when the police did, there were police shootings, and there were, when innocent people got killed and then there were protests, he would get on a plane and he would get to where these people's, where they lived and in their communities. And he would actually meet the families and get to know them and kind of embed himself in the protests and take pictures of the families, go to funerals, go to a birthday party a year later. He invested all this time out of his own pocket going to all of these things. And he was always, anytime there was anything where the police did something out of line or whatever, killed somebody, he was there. And shot during COVID, all the Black Lives Matter protests. And then when all the ICE shit started, he was smack dab in the middle of that. But at the point of the spear. So basically, whereas a lot of people in New York, there's a thing, a lot of people would go to protests. They'd show up and they'd shoot for a couple of hours. And when shit got deep, most of the people I know who shot those events, not all of them, but a lot of them, would go. And then when things started to get crazy, as they often did, cops shooting rubber bullets at people, tear gas, all that kind of shit, charging horses into crowds, kettling, all the shit that the forces that be would do to people that were just trying to express their voice, whether or not it was violent, a nonviolent protest, right? He would be right there, right in the absolute front of everything. Mm. And he would show me, his photographs were amazing, and they were hard to look at, because there was a lot of suffering, a lot of misery, a tremendous amount of violence, and he was taking images that basically, if you believe in the American dream or democracy, he was at January 6th, right up in the front of all of it, right? If you believe in all that stuff, all of his photographs would make you question whether or not we are truly free in this country. If you looked at any of his photographs, you're where are these from? It's really hard to believe by looking at his pictures that it's that they were taken in America. That's the impression you got from it. Hard work to look at, much harder to actually take, right? So he's been doing this for 6-7 years or something like that. And not working for the New York Times, not working for, any publication, doing it all on his own dime, bringing it to galleries and then having them say, oh, this, I can't do anything with this, it's good, but and getting really not a lot of recognition for it. And I got friendly with him and heard a lot of his kind of struggles with this stuff. Loaned him when his SL2S lens went down. I think he had a 28-70 or something that just like tanked. And I loaned him a 5.6 Summeron 28 that I had. So, and he kept shooting with that. And he shot amazing photographs with that lens. Anyway, long story long, especially now with all the stuff that's been happening in the Middle East, I think his work is just, it was like 6-7 years of this stuff. And you're wondering, like, you're putting your life and limb at risk. He was assaulted by the cops, sexually assaulted by the cops. They tried to plant drugs on him, but luckily somebody had video footage, so the case got thrown out of cops actually trying to plant drugs on him to put it, because he was going to all these protests and taking pictures of things that the police were doing and then putting it up. And then so the police figured out who he was and followed him and called him and threatened him and then eventually tried to put drugs on him. This is all documented, by the way. He got a settlement from New York City, all this crazy shit. So that was the preamble to, so yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, Massive Attack, the band Massive Attack, puts out their first new music in 7 years. And it's a song called Boots on the Ground, right? Mm-hmm. And the singer Tom Waits does vocals on it. And Massive Attack has always been a really socially concerned act. They speak up about a lot what's happening in Gaza and, about the technocracy or techno democracy that we're living in, all this stuff. Like they're a really interesting musical act. And I think probably the most important act speaking to that stuff in the world. They put out this video yesterday and it's up, oh wow, new Massive Attack. And I go on and I look and I'm like just on Instagram and I see that this guy has posted on, stories. And so I look at the stories and it says, thank you, Massive Attack and Tom Waits for letting me be part of your legacy. I'm like, what? And I realized their new video is 7 minutes long and they collaborated with him. And the entire video is his 6 or 7 years of photographs from all these different events and all these protests and all the shit that he's gone through. So like the biggest global act speaking to any of this stuff found him. I don't know how, but it was like that was the right moment and the right song and the right artist for his work. So you go to all these galleries, you're trying to get attention on IG, you're trying to say like, I'm doing stuff that I think is important. I'm trying to show all this like really important shit. And like everyone's like, nah, this is too hard, blah, 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 whatever. And then the best possible showcase for his work on this global platform, and it's everywhere. The news is everywhere, all over the world. Everybody that cares about this act, they go to hear the first new music in 7 years from this band, and the entire 7-minute video is him and Robert Del Naja, the guy from Massive Attack, curated. It's just a slideshow of all this shit happening in America for the past like 6 years, and it's all his photographs.
That's awesome.
And if you want to talk about storytelling, like if you want to see storytelling, go find, it's called Boots on the Ground by Massive Attack. His Booty's Instagram is called The Final Eye, and all his photographs are on there. But that's, 6 years after going out there and killing it and putting himself at risk and of being hurt or worse, framed, all this other shit. Now he finally gets like recognition in a amazing way from one of the most important musical artists on the planet working today. So anyway, so anybody who's listening to this, go check that shit out.
Definitely. I do remember him. And now that you mentioned him, we had a podcast many years ago and he was one of the coolest. And I remember that story about the SL2S. He's like, yeah, it broke and Leica wouldn't give me a replacement. I spent all this money for it. They wouldn't even give me a loaner. And I was like, oh man, let me see who I can talk to. Cause I had some friends that were working for like a marketing back in those days. And, he's like, oh, don't worry about it. Right now, I already got a camera. And he was actually telling me about the lens you loaned him. And I was like, oh, but that's still kind of messed up that the camera would break and they wouldn't give him a loaner. But I remember him. Yeah, his work was awesome. I got to go back and revisit it.
And, and he has the burden of being an artist, because he is an artist. He really cares on a deep mental and physical level about everything that he's seeing. And he's been, people who've been shot by the cops for no reason, killed. And then the cops that got off or whatever, slap on the wrist or whatever. Like he's been at their funerals, he's, hugging their families, and like he's been right up close to all that stuff. So the emotional toll, like it's almost like being, I don't want to like make it sound like it's a war photographer because like, that's another level of stuff. But, like I remember having a conversation with him because he was going to go to the Middle East to some of the, when, Arab Spring and all that stuff was happening and protests and, and take photographs there. And I'm like, dude, you got to watch because it's not like you're a credentialed New York Times reporter. Yeah. You're there as an independent. You're just some guy with a camera on the street. You don't have like, if you go missing, like it's not like the New York Times is going to say, where's our guy? It's not like some government, that's some totalitarian government that's going to say, oh, we can't fuck with this guy because he works for the New York Times. You're just going to be in a hole somewhere. You're going to be in a jail, getting electrodes put somewhere, like you got to watch, but I think he's so driven by what he cares about and what he thinks is wrong in the world, that that he's taking that physical and emotional toll and putting himself up close to that. And, so when someone says like, oh, I do storytelling or I do, my shit's poetic, like, okay, I'm not saying we all have to go to that level, but having a little bit of a context and having a little bit of self-awareness and saying like, okay, is it really? That's why picking your eyes up and getting your face out of the phone and looking around and understanding the context and everything that everybody else is doing and what's happening in the world will help you get better at what you do, I think.
I think if anyone, I don't think we can top that. Like, I think that's the best way to end the storytelling segment. And
agree.
Yeah, like Booty is a great guy, but I think next time I hear someone tell me that, oh, my photos are poetic, I'm going to ask them all right, quote me a poem from Edgar Allan Poe, or just quote me a poem in general. Let's see what you know. So I'm going to call them out on it.
Yeah. Hey man, the whole myself looking at myself thing. Let me, like I walk through the city to New York City, and there's constantly people like putting their phones down on a ledge, and then they're like,
TikTok.
It's like the gaze. Like I have to look at myself, and then I'm going to put it up, me looking at myself, so other people can look at me looking at myself. They can look at me, like that whole kind of thing. Yeah. Like that's a thing, and we can do it as photographers too, And it's important to kind of realize like when we're doing that and stop.
The world is in peril right now.
If somebody else says your shit's poetic, like cool, but you'd never catch me saying that about my work. My work is just my work. Like I'm not gonna.
I can honestly say my photographs could be poetic. I write poetry. I don't share it with nobody, but I'm really good. I'm great with words. People should know that. I can write in like a couple minutes. I'm really fucking good at it. I don't know. I have this thing, or once I start writing, it just naturally comes. And that's not to, like brag or boast. It's just something that I've always been able to do. I'm not saying I'm the greatest poet.
That's cool.
But yeah, I like words. I love words. I love putting them together. You can give me a topic and I can write a poem and I'll send it to you. Serious. I'm really good. And it won't be AI. I promise you. So.
I would hope not, because if it was AI, then you would not be a poet. You would just be somebody who knows how to use AI.
Yeah, you can tell ChatGPT. People forget to delete the punctuation. Once you see that super long bar, this is AI. And I see it even all the time at work. People copy and paste.
The thing I love most about the whole ChatGPT thing is that everyone's complaining about how it's going to make their electric prices go up, how it's going to put them out of work, how it's going to fuck up our water supply, and then they still use the shit.
Yes.
Don't fucking use it. You don't need it. There's nothing that you need from ChatGPT or whatever the fuck it's called that you didn't have and urgently needed 2 years ago before you even knew what that shit was. If you don't want your whole future to be like the fucking Matrix, stop using that shit.
We're already there.
I see so many people complain about it, and then like the next thing there's some post made, some fucking AI meme that they put on their IG feed, and I'm like, motherfucker, you just posted how this shit's going to take over the world. Now it's bad, and then 10 minutes later you post something on your IG feed that uses the shit. Don't use it if you fucking think it's gonna ruin the world.
AI fucked us photographers so bad. I didn't realize where we were at in the state of AI, people were talking about RAM going up. And then just coincidentally, I'm scrolling through Instagram on my just wasting time, mindless, just sitting down. And then I seen a video where they're talking about SD card prices are jumping. You should buy now before they go up to. And I was like, this has got to be bullshit. I checked Amazon, which I used to be able to get. I won't go past 250 gigs. Only because I had like a 512. And once the capacity starts going past half, the camera actually starts locking up and freezing. So I have this thing now where I'll buy a 256 gig and I'll shoot it for the day, and then I'll clean it out and format it. But I used to be able to order like a pack of 4 256 SD cards for like $12. Now it's like $80 just for one. The shit is ridiculous.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Because you know what? When I go to buy a box of Portra film, like a 5-rack of Portra, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, $80, $84. And everybody's like, oh, digital's like so cheap. Like, why film is so expensive? I'm like, oh yeah, have you seen the price of fucking hard drives lately?
Yeah. They're
expensive. So yeah. I've actually on my NAS, like because I got it right before the prices went up. I wouldn't be able to buy one now. It's just too much money for I put two 20 terabyte hard drives in it, and I can't even imagine what those things cost now. I used to keep like the DNG if I scanned a negative, I would keep the DNG, and then I would keep the TIFF also, after I converted from a DNG into a TIFF. And now I delete the DNGs because the DNGs are like a little bit bigger than the TIFFs. And I'm like, you know what, if I need to scan this again, I'll just go pull out the neg and scan it again. Because I don't want to run out of space because I don't want to have to buy a hard drive. But again, this is all shit that's all driven by this,
AI stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, if you go online, you go online, you look at like videos of communities where like they're putting AA data centers into these towns, and and it's like the size of, I was watching one where it's like some small town is going to have a data center that's going to be 3 times the size of 3 aircraft carriers.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so what's that going to do for the power requirements in that town? And what's that going to do for the cooling requirements, the water supply, and all this other stuff? And the guy who runs the thing, the CEO of the company, is like, oh, well, this is going to help cure cancer and all this other kind of shit. And they're like, okay, fair enough. But if it's going to do that, then if this is your business, you're going to make all this money. Why do I have to subsidize your power costs? Why do I have to pay more money for water? Like if you're going to be a billionaire off doing all this shit, why do I get to be the one who pays more for water and electric because of what you're doing?
Yeah.
Like if there was any fairness to all this, like pay your share. You pay, like if you're driving up all the prices, then you're using all this electricity and all this water, then you should be taxed on all that shit, not me. Like everybody's electric bill is going up, and we're all just sitting here going, oh, everything's getting more expensive. Electricity's getting more. Okay, yeah, hey, let me ask ChatGPT what movie I should see tonight. Hey, asshole, pick up a fucking newspaper.
There you go. Call movie phone.
You know what your electric bill should be like? Fucking like $800 a month. Maybe don't use ChatGPT to read you a fucking recipe or something.
It's all a part of the
or
design.
compare like whether the Batman movies. Anyway, I'm being an old man right now. What else we got to wrap up?
I think that's it. I do want to share my photo of the week, so I'm gonna pull that up now. Let us see. Share. Stupid thing. All right. And this is my photo of the week.
Louis Armstrong? That's not Louis Armstrong.
It is not Louis Armstrong. This is
no. That's That's. Go ahead.
It is a collaboration from my favorite Japanese photographer and Kanye West's son, and I thought it was the most. I needed this in my life. I needed it so much. I bought the actual vinyl record. Daido Moriyama took a picture of Kanye West's son. So Daido Moriyama's picture of Kanye West's son for the Bully album. And
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Me being such a...
It's funny when you before I saw the mouth, like when Louis Armstrong would like smile, mm-hmm. his cheeks would like get like that, and his eyes would like really narrow, and he was like, he always projected such joy, which was kind of crazy given all the shit he had to deal with in his life. But like when I didn't see the grill, I was like, oh, is that Louis Armstrong? Or the eye, but it was kind of young, so I should have known it wasn't Louis. And then when I saw the grill, I'm like, okay, obviously it's not Louis Armstrong, because Louis Armstrong never wore never had a grill in his mouth. That grill's when Louis Armstrong was alive. Cool picture, man. That's an amazing energy.
I love it. I even love the fact that like Kanye West commissioned Daido Moriyama. Like, I seen the photo before, but if you don't know Daido Moriyama took it, like you would just think it's just an album cover. And my friend CJ, I think you know CJ. You spoke to him before on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, did you see this? He sent me the link of a video where it's Kanye West and Daido Moriyama. They're actually like together and they're talking, and you see Daido with his small little point and shoot, no brand. Well, it's a Nikon or something like that. It's super small. It's not a Leica. It's just a small little point and shoot, and he did this. And obviously it's just like poetic. I'm going to say it's poetic.
You know what though? It's not a valid photograph because clearly it was cropped. It's not straight out of camera, bro.
But
there's no point in shoot that does 6x6.
I'm going to counter you with Ralph Gibson, and his frame is intentional. Everything in this frame needs to be there.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's a crop clearly. Yeah, if it's a point and shoot is not, that doesn't shoot in that format. But that's fine. It's what it needs to be. It's cropped the way that it needs to be. It looks cool as an album cover. It's amazing. Honestly, that's why I like shooting the C330 because I like it being a square, because it reminds me of, like, every picture you take with that reminds me of an album cover. And like in my brain, ever since I was, because my dad had Beatles and Rolling Stone and Creedence Clearwater Revival records when I was a kid, and so I just remember looking at the album covers, and it was a square. So my biggest issue with shooting 35 is always, what am I doing with this stuff on the? I'm only interested in what's in the middle. What am I doing with the stuff on the sides? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the secrets of shooting square format, is that it's a lot easier to get back to that, compositional security, compositional competency when you don't have to worry about the shit that's on the sides of the picture. When you shoot really wide and you have other stuff in the frame, it's a lot harder than when you're shooting in a square.
It definitely is. And I think that exercising your visual cues in different ratios, like square 1:1s, 16:9s, 3:2s, 4:3, I believe. Anyways, all of those different ratios. Now you have to, oh man, this is in there. This wasn't in the other one. What do I do?
Well, and that's why it can be helpful. Like sometimes I'll watch videos on YouTube with cinematographers talking about how they compose shots, how they lit shots, to kind of draw your attention to things, the space between the actors, what was going on in the background. Roger Deakins has a book that came out not too long ago about his whole career. There's going to be Robbie Mueller, who did all the most of the Wim Wenders movies, who's an amazing cinematographer. You look at the work of those people, and again, they're spending a tremendous amount of money to tell a story. And this gets back to this good way to end on the storytelling thing. But like in a movie, you are trying to tell, the whole thing is a story, right? Yeah. And every frame has to support what that story is about. And what you can do within that frame, okay, it's two people sitting and talking, but you could just shoot it like there's two people sitting in a chair across from each other. But when you raise it to the level of artistry, it's like, is one person closer to the camera, so they're bigger? Is one person smaller? Is there space between the two characters? Is a person lit? Is somebody in darkness? Like there's a movie with called The Natural with Robert Redford, right?
Baseball player. Good movie, by the way.
Yeah, and there's a scene. Yeah, there is. There's a scene where he goes up to the office to the guy who owns the team. I think the guy's name is Robert Prosky, who played him. But I think the guy's name is the judge or something like that. But he goes to go see him, and the guy, he walks in, and all the lights are down in the room. And when he comes in, he's in Robert Redford's kind of like in natural light, and you can just see like the shadow of the judge, and he's like completely in darkness. Mm-hmm. And he said he finds darkness more comfortable or something. And it's like, okay, so what is that telling you? That the first time you meet this guy, he's like in darkness. He's kind of partially hidden in darkness. He says he likes to be in darkness. And what's his role to the film? And Redford comes into the room and it's like, he's in the light and the guy wants him to approach and sit. And then Redford will be sitting in the darkness. And then Redford says, no, I'll stand. So he doesn't go over to it. And that foreshadows what they're both about, mm-hmm. what ends up happening in the entirety of the movie. There's actually a funny part in the movie where he like, they try to bribe him to tank the game, and he doesn't take the money, and he gets into an argument. He has words with the judge about it, and then basically when he leaves the room, he flicks the light on, and the guy, it's almost like the guy's like a roach, like scurrying. He's like, get back here, turn that light off. Yeah. He gets all pissed off because Redford, like when he leaves, he turns the light off because it like exposes him to the light. All of that is just where they were sitting, what was their relation, and it's just lightness and darkness, and it supports everything, right? So. Again, looking at movies, listening to interviews with cinematographers, how they lit things, how they frame things, there's difference in spaces. Watch any movie and go, what am I looking at? What's in the frame? Yeah. All of that stuff, painting, what's in the frame, movies, what's in the frame, all comes back to, we live in a frame. What's going to be in your frame? Yeah. If you want to be a good storyteller, start thinking about what the fuck is in your frame. Everything, not just the guy in the middle, mm-hmm. not just the kid licking the ice cream cone, not just the basketball that's rolling down the street. What else is in the frame? That's how to get better at storytelling. The frame is your story. Frame. We'll end with that. The frame is your story. I don't know that I would agree with that assertion. I would just say the frame is your story takes place within the frame is how I would characterize it. Okay. And you know what? Just like as an example, when Redford walked into that room, if there was a girl sitting at the counter chewing gum and blowing bubble, snapping gum, the whole time you wouldn't pay any attention to what the two guys were talking about. You'd be like, who's this fucking girl? Why is she snapping gum? What's the point of that? And then if they left, if he leaves, and then you never saw the girl again the whole movie, you would leave the movie, and the one thing you'd remember from the whole movie would be, what the fuck was that scene with that girl snapping gum? What was the point of that? That's the kind of shit David Lynch would do, because he would fuck with you and make you go like, what was that? Like, there's a scene in one of his movies where there's like some woman behind a diner who scares the shit out of you. And you're like, and everybody talks about that. And that's like the most talked about thing about that in that entire movie, because it scares the shit out of you. But if you take a street photograph and there's like these two people having a conversation, but there's somebody in the background who's like blowing, chewing gum, metaphorically speaking, it pulls down the whole thing and detracts from what you're trying to say. Yeah. So watch out in your photographs for the person in the back snapping gum. Yeah. Mind your frame. That's a Ralph Gibson. For that. Yeah. Or look for that person. So, I think that's a great way to wrap up and conclude this episode. This was the best one yet. The next one will be better. So thank you, Jim. Thank you to the fans, listeners, and supporters worldwide, not just the city, the world. Congratulations. Big shout out to Booty. I'm not going to lie. I apologize, but I did forget about you until Jim mentioned you earlier in this episode. Great person. I am going to include his information in here so people can go check that stuff out, because I'd like to also help support his cause and the work that he's doing. Just a last reminder, it's called Boots on the Ground by Massive Attack, and it just came out yesterday. Go on YouTube and you'll see you'll see the video. And don't look for it on Spotify, because they remove their music from Spotify. Damn. All right. Anyways, any last words? It's nice out where I live. Yeah. So I'm going to go shoot, and I hope anybody else listening to this listens to all this shit and find some value, and I appreciate you, and go take some pictures. Go do it. Just go shoot. Be happy. Live for the moment. Cool. That's all I got.
Jim, thank you again. Until next time, peace out. Thank
Okay.
you to the fans, listeners, and supporters once again.